hit that subscribe button.
Sailors and boaters of Reddit, what's the most amazing or unexplainable thing you've seen at sea? I've done some sailing on a 134 double-masted steel brigantine, finally a question I can answer. We were sailing through an area of high biological productivity in the North Atlantic one night. My shipmate was on bow watch, I was on the quarterdeck assisting the mate with whatever needed to be done. I suddenly heard my shipmate yelling my name and saying I needed to come up to the bow as quickly as I could. When I got up there, I saw 7 or 8 bottlenose dolphins swimming through bioluminescent water right under the bow of our boat. Every inch of them glowed green. It was like something out of a dream. They looked like glow-in-the-dark torpedoes. When we looked out across the horizon, we saw green spots everywhere. There must have been close to 30 dolphins swimming around. We got almost the entire crew out of bed to come watch. That's definitely something I'll remember for the rest of my life. I worked on a cruise ship for 7 months as a youth staff taking care of kids while the parents party it up. At certain parts of the day we closed the playroom to the older kids and just let parents with their children that are under 2 come in. This woman comes to the gate with a double stroller with 2 of the ugliest looking babies I have ever seen in my life. She asks if she can come in with her babies. Of course, I oblige, but something seems a little off. She takes the babies out of the stroller and puts them on the blanket that we have toys placed upon in the middle of the room. It is then that I realize what was so strange about these babies. They were dolls. This woman was taking pictures of them with the toys and pretending they were alive, names and all. I just looked over at my coworker and she's giving me the same look of shock and horror that I had on my face. We had no clue what to do or say. News spread quickly to other crew member on the ship about her. Apparently she bought gold bracelets for them at the jewelry shop on board. That woman is by far the most amazing and strangest thing I have ever witnessed at sea. I was a beautiful day off the coast of Juneau, Alaska, and we were hobby fishing for salmon when we caught a small fish. We noticed a large bald eagle soaring overhead and decided to try and throw the fish to the eagle to give him an easy lunch. My father-in-law threw the fish up in the air and the eagle swooped down, grabbing it out of the air before it hit the water. I was pretty stunned. The eagle was so ready to catch a fish flying through the air, but it seems his reflexes were pretty eagle-like. An acquaintance in high school had sailed around the world with his parents starting when he was in elementary school. Took them 6 or 7 years, so he was in high school when they got back. He had lots of stories of interesting things seen. One I remember was another sailor with a pet monkey. The guy kept a couple chickens for eggs on the boat too. The monkey viewed the chickens as his pets and often held them, stroking them. One chicken stopped playing and the sailor decided to eat it. He took the chicken to his cutting board in the cockpit and cut its head off. The monkey, watching this, screamed in terror, then scrambled to the top of the sailboat mast. It stayed up there for 3 days until thirst drove it down. After that the monkey would run to the top of the mast if the man never got his cooking knives out. I saw a penguin swimming around in the Gulf of Mexico. Friend invited me fishing offshore when I went to visit him. While out there, he pointed out the funny black and white bird in the distance that would occasionally dive down. Proclaimed it a penguin. I calmly explained there is zilch, no way that was a penguin. I explained currents, geography, water temperature, etc. We floated closer to it. It was a penguin. We snapped a few pics of it. Back at home, a trip to Wikipedia told us it was Spheniscus demersus. An African penguin visiting the Gulf of Mexico. Go figure. I was canoeing on the coast of Florida and my wife said let's paddle up to that log. We did. Right before we reached it the log snorted heavily and swam away. Scared the shit out of me. My wife laughed because she knew it was a manatee and knew what would happen. She grew up in Florida. When I was 11, I went on a night fishing trip with my friend's parents. As we got about a half-mile past the Skyway Bridge out of St. Pete, they noticed one of those big blue plastic 55-gallon barrels bobbing in the water by a channel marker. So we pull up to it and the adults lugged it into the boat to open. I remember all of the adults gasping and giggling when they opened it, immediately followed by my friend's mom ushering us to the bow of the boat to sit down and only face forward no matter what. Well, of course the little 11-year-old curious fuckface eventually turned around to try to catch a glimpse of whatever cool adult shit was in that barrel. Well, I turned around to see what looked like a bunch of plastic vacuum-sealed bags of some sort of green herb. It wasn't until years later that I realized what I had witnessed. I do a lot of offshore fishing in the South Atlantic. Some cool and crazy things I've seen while boating. I got caught once in the annual migration of spinner sharks. Went right through a school that I would guess would be at least 10,000 or more sharks that just happened to be working on a very large bait school. You could count no less than 10 sharks breaching the surface about every second. It was one of the scariest experiences yet one of the most amazing sights I've ever seen, and there I ended up right in the middle of the madness. I literally had one shark land in the bow of the boat and another break the cowling on the outboard while several others bounced off the sides. Here's a video of what a single spinner looks like when breaching. Once I almost hit a dead body when returning from a trip at the end of the day. It was just turning dusk and I was coming in from about 15 miles offshore after a day of fishing. I was crossing around 25 knots when out of the corner of my eye I spotted something bright yellow just off the port side of the boat and almost made impact with it. I slowed down and turned the boat around in an attempt to find whatever it was I almost hit but was unsuccessful, and it was getting late and the sun was almost down, so I decided it would be best to just head back in. The next day a body in yellow waders washed up on shore about 25 miles to the north. I can't say for sure if it was the same yellow object I almost hit, but I'd be willing to bet it was. Encountered a great white while surfacing from a dive in about 75 of water, which was extremely unusual because great whites shouldn't be anywhere around the area of the Atlantic where I fish. This was confirmed a few days later by multiple other boats that spotted the same shark and eventually made the news. One time I saw an otter dragging a leatherback sea turtle to shore that it somehow managed to kill. I almost hit a sea turtle the size of a mattress off the coast of Washington. It suddenly appeared and I threw the engine in reverse and swerved hard to port, throwing passengers off their seats. I looked out the starboard window as I went by and seen two eyes staring at me on a head the size of a basketball. While on a crossing from the Bahamas to Charleston, South Carolina, I was on watch in the middle of the night and saw a strange bright orange light rising up from the horizon until it flickered out. Couldn't figure out what it was, but when we got to shore I saw in the newspaper there was a rocket launch in Florida. I was en route to northern Japan after the terrible tsunami happened for disaster relief, Marines. Anyway, I had stepped outside to a catwalk for a smoke after not seeing the sun for a few days. Turns out that it was extremely foggy and snowing, which I had never thought about. The ship was basically reduced to a crawl. It was all very silent and quite peaceful. After chain smoking for 10 to 15 minutes I started to hear things hitting the ship. Had trouble seeing at first, but once I saw the roof of a house and a crib float by I realized where we were. Ran back to my living area to grab some friends. We all get back out there and silently observe people's lives floating by us. Not super crazy or bizarre, but it's something I'll never forget. Spent the next week and a half dealing with crazy weather shifts, doing my part in the cleanup effort. For those who want to read about it, here. Operation Tomodachi. I like this comment from a previous thread like this. I have family who sailed around the world. One day in the North Atlantic, their sailboat was going over some gigantic swells. They didn't have brakes at the top, so it was safe, but the boat was rising and falling way beyond the neutral. At the bottom of a trough my uncle looked up to see the sun behind a wave and the silhouette of a whale inside, above him. A lot of things. I've seen a dolphin do the most elegant backflip you've ever seen. We caught a blue albatross as it went to dive for our gear. When we pulled the bird in to release it, it was so unbelievably calm, we held its wings open to take a picture. Massive birds, those ones. At the back while working gear, all of a sudden we see this black blade-like looking thing climb its way out of the water. Once it reaches a height of roughly 6 feet, it comes slamming down into the water. It does this maybe 5 or 6 times. Hard to explain how bizarre it is seeing something like this until you've spent days/weeks/months staring off at water and seeing nothing. It was the tail of a thresher shark that was climbing out of the water and trying to concuss the squid-like looking gear. But honestly, one of the most amazing things is the bait ball. It's caused by weather phenomena actually. What happens is that herring and other feed fish predominantly survive in green, plankton-filled water. Their predators hate it for the most part because the plankton clogs gills and so on. But what can happen is if blue and green water mix and due to temperature differences and a large amount of clear blue boils up from below, it can expose massive schools of feed fish. Well, once this happens, the entire ocean kicks into gear. Tuna come over, dolphins come, sharks, seagulls and other birds, everybody's getting into it. Below, they create this tightening circle of doom where they travel around the ball, keeping the feed fish from escaping. Fins of all kinds breach the surface. And just when we think we've seen everything, a massive humpback whale crashes the party. It went directly through the center, destroying the ball, scattering the feed and all the predators. Mum's partner is fisherman. A couple of things that came to mind. The incredible amount of great white shark encounters they have out at sea, obviously attracted by the bait or something. Stories of being circled and harassed by sharks for sometimes up to days, in at least 1 or 2 occasions resulting in them having to go back in. Freak waves. Sadly, the amounts of fishermen killed by freak waves is too high. Imagine Mother Nature just unleashing a huge wave out of nowhere that obliterates a fishing boat, killing those on board. He's participated in many searches for bodies and those of lost fishermen at sea, including hauling numerous bodies on board and liaising with police in the searches. My favorite though, was something he actually saw on land while out at sea. On an incredibly remote and rugged part of Tasmania's west coast, the crew noticed what appeared to be a dog on the beach. As they got closer they noticed it was sniffing around in some seaweed and walking a bit differently to a dog. As they continued to get closer they also noticed something else. It had what appeared to be the outline of stripes along its back half. Yes, still to this day they believe they saw an extinct Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine. Regular sightings are still reported in Tasmania and many local fishermen have also reported seeing them in that particular area. Freshwater boater here. I typically hunt and fish the Arkansas River, where I'm at. It's a huge body of water. One day while fishing in some lazy backwater off the Arkansas, my GF and I, heard a faint, very faint raised voice. We stopped and listened intently. The wind and noises of the water lapping against the side of the boat made it impossible to make out what they were saying, but it sounded serious. So we stowed the fishing gear and made towards the sound. When we came out of the backwater area towards the main channel we could see a capsized boat with 2 people clinging to it desperately screaming for help. A pretty dangerous situation. They appeared to have no life vests on and the river was carrying them away. We made our way over and helped the couple into our boat and made for shore so I could go back and retrieve the boat. Another boater saw what was happening and made his way to the capsized boat. The couple were older and clearly exhausted from their ordeal. From talking with them they told me they had hit a sandbar going top speed, was only a 25 horsepower motor and a 16 feet boat, and when the boat suddenly stopped water swamped over the stern and turned the boat over. After dropping the couple off on the bank with my GF to rest I helped the other boat tow the boat to the bank. When we got it there we managed to get enough of the boat on the bank so we could turn it over and begin dewatering it. Once it was seaworthy again I towed it back to the boat ramp for them and they were able to get it back on a trailer and they left after thanking us profusely. TLDR helped an old couple after their boat capsized. For me the memory that sticks with me was when I first realized just how powerful the sea is. I was working on a boat in Japan. On my way back into port after a 4-week swing, just sat in my cabin one evening watching a film on my laptop when every now and again I noticed a bright flash from behind me. I turned around just in time to glance out of my porthole as a bolt of lightning light up the sea and capture a snapshot of an enormous wave just about to break over the side of the boat, which started getting tossed around like a toy. The boat's about 120 meters lower. Certainly gave me the shivers anyway. Most amazing is the non-sound of wind. When you're on shore, wind rustles through the trees, moves wind chimes, makes birds chirp, etc. Way offshore none of those sounds exist. It's very eerie to feel the wind but have it make no noise. Just a force that moves across your skin and then gently leaves without a sound. Long ago, was in the US Coast Guard, stationed at an unnamed air station. It was a weekend and I had operations duty. Okay, this is more amusing than amazing, so don't get your hopes up too high. I received a call on a telephone landline that someone was poaching lobsters on the north side of the base. I did the normal thing, which was to press the OOG alert and loudspeak boat crew to operations. Waited and no one came in. I stood up and looked out at our pier and the 30-footer was missing. I sent someone running to the north side and yes, it was our boat's crew poaching the lobsters. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below with your own story. Smash that like button. If you subscribe you will be given a lifetime supply of free internet points.